My wife left me with $90,000 debt and ran off with my childhood bully. Then my mom looked me in the eye and said, she always wanted a real man. 3 days later, I got a message that made me freeze. So let me get this straight. You maxed out 3 credit cards, took out a personal loan, drained our savings, and left me for Troy McCann? Corinne, don't make this harder than it is, Malcolm. You knew we were done. Me? No, Corinne. I didn't. I didn't know we were done. I didn't know you were sleeping with a guy who used to dunk my head in a toilet at age 14. And I sure as heck didn't know you were taking out loans in my name. Corinne, it's complicated. Me, no. It's criminal. There's a kind of betrayal that doesn't just break your heart, it makes you question whether you ever had one in the first place. My name's Malcolm. I'm 41 years old, born and raised in Boise, Idaho. For most of my adult life, I thought I was doing things right. I worked in IT for the city, nothing glamorous, but stable. I was the guy who showed up on time, paid bills, didn't cheat, didn't gamble, didn't drink more than 2 beers at a party. I thought that would be enough. My wife, Corinne, used to say she appreciated how steady I was. That was the word she used, steady. Like I was a bookshelf or a Honda Civic. We met in our late 20s. She worked at a dentist's office and liked bad reality TV, Pinot Grigio, and long baths. We dated for 2 years before getting married in a modest ceremony at a vineyard outside Caldwell. No kids, we agreed on that early. She said she wasn't wired for motherhood, and honestly, I was okay with it. I wanted a partner, not necessarily a family. Looking back, I think I spent years trying not to notice the cracks. The way she never really talked about the future. How she started going out more with the girls, but never wanted me to come. How she'd get annoyed when I asked simple questions like, how was your day? Like I was bothering her. But I never, in a million years, expected what happened next. It started on a Tuesday. I remember because I left work early to surprise her with dinner tie from that little place on Vista Avenue she used to love. I walked in, expecting to see her on the couch, maybe halfway through a glass of wine and reruns of 90 Day Fiancé. Instead, I walked into silence. The living room was empty. The bedroom? Half empty. A few drawers open, some hangers swinging like someone had packed in a hurry. No note on the table, just one taped to the fridge. Malcolm, this isn't working. I need something different. I'm sorry. That was it. I froze. The food slid out of my hands and onto the floor. My first instinct was panic. Did she get hurt? Was she kidnapped? It didn't even cross my mind that she left. I called her phone. Straight to voicemail. Again, voicemail. I checked her location, she turned it off. The next day, I went to the bank to check our joint savings. We had about $28,000 saved the last time I looked. We were planning to use it for a down payment on a small house. Balance? Negative. Overdrawn by $2,300. The bank manager looked at me sympathetically as I sat across from him, my face probably pale as a ghost. He pulled up transaction after transaction. Large withdrawals, wire transfers to an account I didn't recognize, and purchases in states she had no reason to be in: Arizona, New Mexico, Florida. Are you aware of a $22,000 personal loan taken out last December in your name? He asked. I stared at him blankly. What? There were also 3 credit cards I didn't know existed. All maxed out. I was shaking. I couldn't feel my hands. I asked how she got those accounts under my name. The guy pulled up electronic signatures. All mine. Except they weren't. Corinne used to have me sign things casually: insurance updates, joint tax documents. Even once when she told me it was for our health savings account. I never questioned it. Never imagined she'd forge documents and use my credit as her personal piggy bank. The total debt? Just over $90,000. I drove to my mom's house that night. I hadn't even told her Corinne was gone yet. When she opened the door, she gave me a once-over and frowned. What's wrong with you? I told her everything. Or tried to. Halfway through, I broke down crying. And my mother, this woman who raised me alone, who always said I needed to toughen up, just sipped her coffee and said, she always wanted a real man. It felt like someone reached into my chest and ripped out whatever was left of me. For 3 days, I didn't leave my apartment. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I watched the ceiling fan spin and thought about every choice I'd ever made. Every moment I ignored my gut. Every time I excused her coldness, her mood swings. The nights she came home smelling like someone else's cologne. And then I got the message. It was a Facebook DM from Troy McCann. If you grew up in Boise in the late 90s, you knew Troy. He was the kind of bully who didn't just shove kids into lockers, he made it his personal mission to destroy people. He used to corner me in the locker room and snap my towel. Punch me once in front of the girl I liked just to hear her laugh. I hadn't seen him in nearly 20 years. His message? Hey man, didn't want you to hear it from someone else. Corinne and I are together. It just happened. Sorry if that's hard. Hope you're okay. Attached was a picture of the 2 of them in Cancun, drinks in hand, her in the bikini I bought her for our 10-year anniversary. His arm was around her waist like they'd been together for years. I stared at the screen until my vision blurred. That night, I left. No plan. Just packed a bag, got in my car, and drove until the gas light came on. Ended up in Stanley, Idaho, staying in a rundown motel near Redfish Lake. The heater barely worked, and the water smelled like sulfur. But it was quiet. For 2 days, I didn't speak to a single soul. On the third morning, I opened my email. Just habit. I wasn't expecting anything. There it was. Subject, are you okay? It was from Jules, Corinne's younger sister. We hadn't spoken in years. She was always kind, a little introverted. Lived in Seattle now. The last time I saw her was Thanksgiving 4 years ago. We'd talked about books. She remembered I liked Raymond Carver. Malcolm, I'm sorry. I just found out. She blocked me and Mom. I don't know what she's doing with that guy. I can't even understand it. But I wanted to say I see you. And you didn't deserve this. If you need to talk, I'm here. I don't know why that message hit me the way it did. Maybe it was because it was the first sign that someone still believed in me. That I wasn't crazy or weak or worthless. Just someone who got blindsided. We started messaging. Nothing heavy at first. Then longer emails. Calls. It helped. A few weeks later, I was back in Boise. I sold what I could. Moved into a small one-bedroom. Canceled every streaming service. Took freelance gigs at night to start chipping away at the debt. And then, out of nowhere, I got a letter from a law firm. Corinne and Troy were under investigation for fraud. Apparently, Troy had been using fake identities and stealing personal information to apply for loans. Corinne had either knowingly helped or blindly signed documents, many of which were in my name. The firm was collecting statements from victims. I submitted everything I had. And for the first time in months, I felt like I was doing something. Like I wasn't just picking up the pieces, I was helping stop them from doing this to someone else. The weeks after I sent in my documentation were strange. I didn't hear anything right away, which made me anxious. Every time the phone rang and I didn't recognize the number, my heart jumped. I was half hoping it was someone telling me they'd locked Corinne and Troy up, and half dreading it was a debt collector calling about another loan I hadn't found yet. I started writing everything down: dates, transactions, emails. I became a meticulous record keeper, not because I was trying to win anything, but because it gave me some tiny semblance of control. The nights were the hardest. The silence was heavy. Our apartment used to be filled with background noise: her TV shows, her hairdryer, her footsteps, the clinking of her wine glass on the counter. Now it was just me and Benny, a rescue mutt I adopted on impulse one weekend when I couldn't stand being in the apartment alone anymore. Benny saved me in ways I didn't expect. He didn't care about debt or infidelity or court dates. He just needed to be walked, fed, and occasionally scratched behind the ears. He reminded me to get out of bed, to go outside, to breathe. Jules and I kept talking. It didn't turn romantic. Not yet, but the connection deepened. We talked about books, grief, the absurdity of our families. Her mother had disowned Corinne after finding out about the fraud. She didn't say it outright, but I could tell she was angry, ashamed. She said it was like watching a stranger take over her sister's body. I admitted that I'd spent years pretending not to see who Corinne really was. There was one conversation with Jules I'll never forget. It was late. I was sitting on the floor of my kitchen, eating cold leftover chili because I'd forgotten to shop again. She asked, "Do you think she ever loved you?" I didn't answer right away, because I wasn't sure. Not even after 11 years together. I think she loved what I gave her. The house, the stability, the security. But me? No, I don't think she ever saw me. Not really. There was a long pause, and she said softly, "I see you." I put the phone down and cried like a damn child. A few months passed. The investigation continued. I was told there was a strong case against them: wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy. Corinne had signed off on dozens of documents with forged data. Whether she knew or just didn't care, it didn't matter. The law didn't care if you were clueless when people were getting robbed. Meanwhile, my mom kept up her usual brand of emotional barbed wire. She called once to ask why I hadn't invited her over in a while. I told her I was going through a lot, trying to get my life together. "You think you're the only one who's been through crap?" she snapped. "You got duped. So what? Man up. People have it worse." I should have hung up. But instead, I just said, "You know, I'm starting to think the reason I didn't see the signs with Corinne is because you trained me to think love always comes with disappointment." Silence. She didn't call again for a month. Meanwhile, I was making progress, slowly. I consolidated the credit cards. Got on a repayment plan. Picked up an extra job fixing office computers in the evenings. I'd go to work from 8 to 4, grab a sandwich, then drive across town to install firewalls and troubleshoot network issues until 10 p.m. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't fun, but it was mine. And somehow, I started to feel like myself again. Or maybe, for the first time, I was meeting myself without all the noise, without Corinne's criticisms, without Mom's judgment, without the weight of pretending everything was okay. One afternoon, I got a call from the lead investigator on the case. "I can't promise anything, but based on what we've gathered, you're likely to be considered a victim, not a co-conspirator. The fraudulent accounts were opened with forged or misleading documentation, and you've cooperated fully." I thanked him, but I didn't celebrate. I'd learned not to count on anything. That same evening, Jules texted me. Hey, I'm thinking of coming to Boise for a few days. Do you want to get coffee? It was the first time she'd suggested seeing each other since all this began. I said yes. Obviously. We met at a little place near Hyde Park, one of those indie coffee shops with mismatched chairs and chalkboard menus. She walked in wearing a raincoat and a tired smile. I stood up and gave her a hug, and for a moment, neither of us said anything. It was quiet, comfortable, like we'd known each other longer than we had. Like maybe we were both just people trying to stitch our lives back together. We sat for 3 hours, just talking. About our siblings, our jobs, her writing, my dog, the trial, therapy, bad coffee, and the time I got stung by a jellyfish in high school and cried in front of a lifeguard named Mason. It wasn't a date, but it was something. When she left, she gave me a kiss on the cheek and said, "I'm proud of you." I didn't know how much I needed to hear that. A few days later, I got another update from the legal team. The trial was moving forward. Corinne and Troy were both pleading not guilty, but based on the evidence, the DA was confident. I try not to think about what would happen to them. I wasn't hoping for revenge. Not anymore. But I did want closure. I wanted to sit in that courtroom and look them in the eye not with anger, but with clarity. To show them that I wasn't broken. That I had survived what they did. And I was still standing. And maybe, just maybe, finally living for myself. The day of the hearing came faster than I expected. I sat in the back of the courtroom in a secondhand blazer that didn't quite fit right anymore, next to a woman from the DA's office who kept reassuring me that I didn't have to say anything unless I was called. My mouth was dry. My hands were cold. And then they walked in. Troy looked exactly the same. Same smug expression, same ridiculous alpha male swagger, even though he was wearing a wrinkled button-down like he'd pulled it off the floor that morning. Corinne looked different. Not bad, just smaller. Tired. She was wearing a gray pantsuit that probably used to fit better, and her hair was darker than I remembered. Less effort, maybe. I didn't know what I expected her to look like, but I felt nothing when I saw her. No anger. No sadness. Just distance. Like looking at a memory you've already filed away. They didn't look at me. The hearing was mostly procedural. Motions, dates, paperwork. But when the judge asked if anyone from the victim list wished to make a statement, if the case went to trial, the DA looked at me. I nodded. The hearing adjourned. I walked out with a strange sense of detachment, like I'd just watched actors in a play. It didn't feel real, not yet. On the sidewalk outside, I took a deep breath. The sun was just starting to dip, casting long shadows down the courthouse steps. I stood there a long time. Then my phone buzzed. "Jules, how did it go?" I called her instead of texting. We talked while I walked back to my car. She listened quietly while I described the scene: the cold room, the bailiff's bored face, the way Troy kept bouncing his leg like a kid in detention. "You okay?" she asked. "I think I am," I said. I didn't expect that. But yeah, I think I am. There was a pause, and then she said something that stuck with me. "You know, Malcolm, when people do horrible things, it's not just about what they take from you. It's about what they leave you with. The mess, the shame, the work. But you've cleaned it up. All of it. That's something." And she was right. The emotional mess Corinne left behind was worse than the financial one. The debt could be calculated, paid off slowly. But the loss of trust? The feeling of being that blind, that disposable? That takes longer to dig out from. But I was doing it. Piece by piece, I was rebuilding my life. I had a system. Wake up, walk Benny, morning shift, break, evening gig, dinner, read, sleep, repeat. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Somewhere in the middle of all this, Jules came to visit again. No pretense this time. She booked a weekend, said she wanted to see Benny, and packed a bag. We didn't plan anything fancy. We went for long walks along the Greenbelt, drank too much diner coffee, watched an entire season of the Great British Bake Off on my sagging couch, and laughed about how we both cried during the bread episode. On Sunday night, she curled up next to me and said, "Do you ever think you were meant to go through this?" I didn't answer right away. I don't know. I think I needed something to wake me up. I spent a decade asleep, thinking security was the same thing as love. Maybe this was the only way I'd ever snap out of it. She rested her head on my chest and whispered, "You're not the same guy anymore." And I wasn't. I had lines now. Boundaries. I said no without guilt. I knew when something felt off. I didn't bend myself in half trying to keep the peace. I didn't excuse cruelty as stress. I didn't make myself small to be lovable. I was me. Finally, in early March, I got a letter from the court. The trial was scheduled. Full jury, multiple charges, estimated length, 3 weeks. The night before it started, I didn't sleep. Not because I was afraid, because I wanted to say the right thing. I wanted my statement to count. Not just legally, but personally. I wanted to close this chapter with clarity. With dignity. Without venom. I wrote and rewrote that letter 10 times. And when I stood at the podium, 2 weeks later, looking out at a courtroom full of strangers and lawyers, and a woman who used to know the sound I made when I couldn't sleep, I read it. I told the truth. That I loved her. That I trusted her. That I was blind. and that she hurt me in ways I can't fully describe. That I lost more than money, I lost years of my life living in fear, confusion, shame. But I also said that I forgave her, not because she deserved it, but because I needed to stop carrying her mistakes on my back. When I looked up, I saw Corinne wipe a tear away. I didn't know if it was guilt or regret or just embarrassment. I didn't care. The verdict came in 2 weeks later. Guilty on 4 counts of fraud and identity theft. 3-year sentence, with parole eligibility after 18 months. Troy got more. He'd already had a record. 5 years, minimum of 3. They didn't look at me once as they were let out. And that was okay. I didn't need anything from them anymore. The courthouse was quiet by the time I walked out. It was late afternoon, early spring in Boise, the kind of day where it's chilly in the shade but warm on your face. I remember standing on the steps, the wind picking up a little, and thinking, that's it. It's done. I expected to feel something bigger. Relief, anger, grief, some dramatic swell of emotion that would tie it all up like a movie. But there was just quiet. A deep, hollow silence, but not a painful one. It felt like the kind of silence that comes after a storm. For the first time in years, there was no next hearing. No bills in the mailbox with unfamiliar balances. No unanswered questions hanging over me. Just the rest of my life, waiting. I walked to my car, sat in the driver's seat, and didn't start it right away. I just sat there, watching people walk by. A couple holding hands. A kid on a scooter. A man in a business suit eating an ice cream cone like it was nothing. Life kept going. I was still in it. Jules called that evening. I didn't even have to tell her what happened. She already knew. "Can I ask you something?" she said after a pause. "Sure. What now?" It was a fair question. I had spent nearly a year in survival mode. Repairing, rebuilding, retelling the same story over and over to lawyers, to creditors, to myself. Now that the noise was gone, I realized I didn't know who I was without it. "I think I just want to be boring for a while," I said. She laughed softly. "Boring sounds kind of perfect." And that's what I did. I leaned into the ordinary. I started sleeping through the night. I took Benny on longer walks, even when I was tired. I picked up books I'd been meaning to read for years. I cleared out the junk drawer, donated clothes, learned how to make sourdough bread badly. One day I walked past a mirror and didn't immediately think, "You're a failure." That was a turning point. Work got easier, too. I stopped worrying about impressing anyone. I showed up, did my job well, and left it at the office. I wasn't trying to prove anything anymore. I wasn't waiting for recognition that never came. I found peace in being average. My mom, Cheryl, didn't come to the trial. She never asked about it, either. But one Saturday, she called me. It was awkward as always. "You still got that dog?" she asked. "Yeah, Benny. I never liked dogs, but he looks all right in pictures. Seems loyal." We didn't talk long, but it was the first time she didn't say something cutting. Maybe she saw the headlines. Maybe someone told her. Or maybe she was finally seeing me for who I was now, someone she couldn't bully or guilt into anything anymore. The next big shift came from Jules. It was summer by then. She came down to Boise for a few days again, and something was different. We were more relaxed with each other. The weight of Corinne, the shadow she cast, had finally started to fade. One evening, we were sitting on my tiny patio, watching the sun set over the rooftops. Jules had her feet tucked under her, a glass of wine in her hand, and Benny snoring at her feet. "I could get used to this," she said. "To wine on a plastic patio chair? No. To this version of life. Simple. Honest. No pretending." It was the most romantic thing anyone had said to me in years, and it wasn't even meant to be. We didn't define anything that night. But when she leaned over and rested her head on my shoulder, I didn't pull away. It was the first time I let someone close without feeling like I had to give up a part of myself to make it work. And still, the shadows crept in from time to time. There were nights when I'd wake up sweating, heart racing, certain that a new debt had been discovered or a new message from Corinne would pop up and drag me back under. There were times I still blamed myself, wondering if I was too trusting, too slow to notice, too desperate to hold on to something that was never really mine. But those moments were fewer and farther between. And when they came, I didn't panic. I just let them pass. Like weather. Like they had a right to visit, but not to stay. I started saying yes to more things: dinner invites, volunteer work, a monthly trivia night with coworkers I used to avoid. I wasn't trying to fix my life anymore. I was just living it. And then, something happened I didn't expect. One afternoon, I got a small check in the mail. Restitution. It wasn't much, barely enough to cover one of the smaller credit cards. But it wasn't about the amount. It was about the fact that someone, somewhere, acknowledged what had been taken from me. I held that check like it was something sacred. Not because of what it bought, but because of what it meant. Accountability. Closure. Forward motion. I deposited it and bought myself a decent bottle of whiskey, the kind I used to avoid because it felt indulgent. That night, I had one glass, alone on the couch, and toasted to no one. And then I wrote a letter to myself. Not to Corinne. Not to Troy. Not to the DA or the bank or my mother. To me. It wasn't long. Just a page. I wrote everything I had learned. Everything I survived. Everything I promised I'd never forget. I folded it up, put it in an envelope, and tucked it inside a book I hadn't opened since College Cat's Cradle, I think. Maybe one day I'll find it again. Maybe I'll read it when I forget how far I've come. But I know this much now. Survival isn't the end. It's the beginning. The summer rolled into fall, and by then, life had taken on a rhythm that felt not only manageable, but good. Not exciting or glamorous, but peaceful. Predictable in the best ways. I'd never valued that kind of simplicity before. Jules and I were in something. We didn't rush to label it. She still lived in Seattle, and I was rooted in Boise, but we saw each other twice a month and talked every night. It was easy, honest. No one pretending. No one holding power over the other. I told her I wasn't ready to move in with anyone again, and she understood. One afternoon, as I was folding laundry, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Normally, I would have ignored it, but something told me to answer. "Mr. Ashford?" A man said on the other end. "This is Leo Harker. I'm a regional hiring manager for Mountain State Credit Union. I'm trying to reach you regarding a reference request." My heart skipped. He continued, "I have an applicant named Troy McCann who listed you as a former personal contact and business associate. I just wanted to verify your experience with him." I almost dropped the phone. It took me a second to collect myself. "Sure," I said calmly. "Happy to help." Leo asked a few standard questions. How long I'd known Troy, whether we'd worked together, if I would trust him with financial responsibilities. I paused, just long enough to let the air feel heavy. "Leo, I'll be honest with you," I said. "I'm not sure why he listed me. Troy McCann and I have a complicated history. He and my ex-wife were convicted of fraud last year. He used my identity, stole thousands of dollars under my name. I was one of the primary victims." The line went silent for a moment. "Oh," Leo finally said. "I wasn't aware of that." "No worries," I said. "Just thought you should know who you're dealing with. If you want official documentation, I have the court transcripts." He thanked me quickly and hung up. And that was it. It wasn't the kind of revenge you see in movies. No explosions. No grand confrontations. Just a simple truth, delivered to the right person at the right time. It felt good. Troy would learn, over and over again, that your actions follow you. You can't network your way out of a paper trail. A week later, I got an anonymous email tip from a mutual friend of someone who knew Troy's cousin. Said he was furious. Said he blamed me for ruining his fresh start. Apparently he'd lied on his application, said the fraud conviction was a misunderstanding. And when the truth came out, they dropped him on the spot. I smiled for the first time in a long time in that specific, smug way I didn't know I was capable of. Not because I wanted to see him suffer, but because I didn't have to lift a finger. The truth did all the work for me. As for Corinne, the last I heard she was transferred to a women's transitional facility outside Spokane. Low security. Word was she tried to spin her story into a memoir. Some tale of emotional torment and desperation. I don't know if she finished it. I doubt anyone bought it. But part of me hoped she did write it. Maybe it would force her to face who she really was. I never responded to the one letter she sent me during her sentence. It was handwritten, 6 pages long. Half apology, half justification. She said she'd lost herself, that she got caught up in something bigger, that Troy wasn't what she thought, and that she never stopped loving me. I read it once, then shredded it and threw it in the compost. The ground can make better use of her words than I ever could. That winter, I finally paid off the last of the debt she left me with. I walked into the bank, asked for a balance printout, and when the teller handed it to me, I stared at the number 0 for a long time. I bought myself a black coffee and sat in my car for 20 minutes, just feeling what it felt like to owe nothing. Jules sent me a bottle of bourbon with a card that said, "To being free, finally." We toasted over FaceTime. The next spring, she got a writing fellowship in Boise and moved into an apartment 10 minutes from mine. One night, we walked Benny through the neighborhood, talking about everything and nothing, and I realized I didn't think about Corinne anymore. Not with bitterness. Not with sadness. Just not at all. She was a storm that passed, and I rebuilt better afterward. One day, Jules asked me, "If you could go back and undo it all, would you?" I thought about it and said, "No, because I'm finally living a life where I don't have to flinch. I don't have to check the mail with dread. I don't have to tiptoe around moods or make excuses or bend myself into something small to keep someone happy. The best revenge isn't making someone suffer. It's living a life where their existence doesn't matter anymore." And that's exactly where I am.